My name is Brian Ellis, and this is my testimony. I'm 42 years old. I was born in Phoenix, Arizona. I was raised in a small town in Colorado called Cortez in the Four Corners area. My life was normal in the elementary years. I remember my mom, my father, my sisters. We had a good life. We had a 2-story house, a dog, a cat, a Christmas tree full of presents. That would all change suddenly in a tragic event in our lives. My father had owned his own paving company, and there was some issues with some money that was involved in some partners of his. It would be another day just like any other day. Me and my sister went to school, and the principal had called us in the office and told us to go to my Uncle Gary's when we got out of school. We didn't think nothing of it. We found out later that my dad was home with my mother at the time, and these gentlemen arrived up to the house. He had told my mom to run out the back door, and he ended up shooting and killing his brother, of all people, and he shot and wounded another man who was with him. He was charged with second-degree murder and sentenced to 15 years in prison. As soon as that happened, it's amazing how the adversary didn't waste no time coming in on a wounded family. Once the adversary came in and he started to affect certain things in our lives, it began to change us, and of course we were corrupted with the ways of the world. And once the world starts to teach you things, and you lack the knowledge or the truth of knowing any better, it can consume you, and that's how it all begun with us. In this time frame of not having a father in the home and a mom trying to do it all, for me, I ended up getting involved in drugs. At the time, I was an all-star on the baseball team, and once I lost my father and began to live with the world and of the world, I started smoking marijuana, cigarettes, piercing my ear, doing things of that nature. The next thing you know, it's just full-out blown drugs of all sorts. During this process of growing up, I had been in a couple situations where I was molested. It did affect so many things in my life, and I thought I could bury it and just forget it, and it would never affect anything else, but it was actually the opposite of that. It was like taking a time bomb and going into my future and planting it in certain instances of my life where it would affect me in the latter years, and it did. I began to do drugs through my youth and learn how to hide them and be deceitful. And when I started my career, I was able to do the same thing. Sin to me was like a creek with no current. I could play in it all day long without ramification, without repercussion, without conviction, without shame or guilt. I would fail in my first marriage tremendously because I never built that foundation on God. And though I had a great marriage to my first wife, and we have children, but I never did get it, spiritually. So it wasn't a question of if it was going to collapse, but when, and it did. I ended up meeting another woman who God had sent to save me. She led me to Christ. I had gotten scared at church. And when I got there, I remember her telling me to raise my hand. When I raised my hand, I felt God for the first time. It was such a powerful feeling, and I thought in that moment I had figured it out, that I had waited all this time, 36 years to come to know the Lord, and if this is what it was, and I could have saved myself so much headache and heartache. And I began to walk in obedience to the Lord, and He began to change my life. I began to preach and to minister to people, and God was moving, and He was moving powerfully. The only problem was I was 5 years in my marriage, and it was fragile. I had never learned to love my wife like Christ loved the church. I had never learned how to build a foundation upon the rock of God. I had built this whole thing my whole life, and I wasn't willing to just let go and tear down the house and start new. I thought I could build on top of it. The only person I was fooling was myself. And that's what happened with my wife, with my family members, with the people that loved me. They knew at that point that I would have to endure the collapse, and it would be in that brokenness where I would truly repent and truly find God and truly know Him in a way I could never even imagine. Through all the turmoil, God loved me so much that He allowed me to experience some things that I wouldn't wish upon anybody. I became a target, and through pornography, through my actions, through all these things in the workplace, there were many things that I lacked understanding and knowledge on, and God loved me so much that He would go through this type of setting to get me to understand what it is I was doing wrong. And because I was not walking in obedience, because I was not submitted in His will, there was a consequence that had to come with that. And for me, the wages of sin became death. It was instant. And because of my pride and other issues, I fought it longer than I should have. But in the end, God won, and there was a day that came where God comes in many forms. He came in the form of Mike McDowell. He came in the form of Pastor Charlie McKay. He came in the form of Pastor Brian Gray, and he came in the form of Teen Challenge and the staff here at Teen Challenge, and they rescued me from underneath a bridge where I had been willing to just let the rest of my life rot in that instance because of pride and other issues. I didn't want to have to face the truth. The reality never left. But as of right now, I had to make a choice. I had to make a choice for me to spiritually go under the knife and deal with this surgery, with these root issues I had buried within so deep that I never thought they'd resurface. The Bible tells us that the truth will set you free, and if the truth is even at the magnitude for my sake has to come forth, and that's what it has to be, and I'm content with that. I call this place the RE. In the world, it's an ER, an emergency room we go to, but you know, in a spiritual realm, it's an RE because this is where we recover our eternity. I don't want anybody to have to suffer and endure the things that I've had to suffer in this world. I want them to know God, and I'm grateful for the supporters of this ministry that's been around for 70 years, that stood the test of time in every instance, and still to this day is still creating disciples, broken men to go out and to lead their homes again, to rise up to the occasion. And everything, you know, I'm just so grateful to God for his mercy, for his grace, for his love, for his forgiveness. And I'm grateful to Adult and Teen Challenge. January 7th, 2017, I made a decision that I was going to come and do this year-long program, and I haven't looked back since.